Hello, friends, and welcome to Jewels of Truth. Today I'm going to start a series entitled Seventh-day Adventists Punished for Violating the Sunday Law. What I'm doing, I'm going back into a book by A.T. Jones entitled The Two Republics. At the very end of this very large book, very large volume, he has case after case after case after case of Seventh-day Adventists who were punished, persecuted, some imprisoned, fined for violating the Sunday law back in the 1880s and or 1890s. Now, before I read those, I just want to go back here. I should have put this in the notes, but I want to go back here to the book, The Great Controversy, pages 605 to 606. Because there are some, both Seventh-day Adventists and non-Seventh-day Adventists, who ridicule Seventh-day Adventists. And they say, you're paranoid, or that's a bunch of nonsense. There's never going to be a Sunday law persecuting Sabbath keepers and Seventh-day Adventists in this country, the United States of America. Sister White tells us in the book, The Great Controversy, page 605 to 606. Heretofore, those who presented the truths of the third angel's message have often been regarded as mere alarmists. Their predictions that religious intolerance would gain control of the United States, that church and state would unite to persecute those who keep the commandments of God, have been pronounced groundless and absurd. It has been confidently declared that this land could never become other than what it has been, the defender of religious freedom. But as the question of enforcing Sunday observance is widely agitated, the event so long doubted and disbelieved is seen to be approaching, and the third message will produce an effect which it could not have had before. Now, one more thing before I get into these cases. In a recent video that we produced for the Jewels of Truth, that video was entitled The Papacies or the Jesuits, I forget the title of it now. I should know. I think the Papacies plan to destroy Protestantism. Well, there were a lot of Catholics who attacked me and the video, saying this, in one way or another, that this is a bunch of nonsense, this would never happen, etc., etc. Well, one of the commentators, one of the persons that commented on the video said, bring back the Inquisition. And I responded to him, and I said, your comment proves everything that I have said on these videos about the Catholic Church. There are people out there who want to bring back the Inquisition. And who conducted the Inquisition? The Catholic Church, the papacy. Now, what I'm about to read to you occurred in the 1880s and 1890s, in the good old days in this country. So, if ever a person would have any kind of excuse for saying, oh, this would never happen, it would be back then, in the good old days. This country is falling apart. And there are elements in this country who want to bring back the Inquisition. So, though these things that I'm about to read to you happened back then, they prove that this will happen in our day. So, Brother A.T. Jones says, we here present an account of a sufficient number and variety of cases in the history of the Arkansas Sunday Crusade to show that the whole proceeding from beginning to end was only an exhibition of the persecuting spirit. The first case, Elder J.W. Scholes. Elder J.W. Scholes, a Seventh-day Adventist minister, had gone from Michigan to Arkansas in June 1884 to assist in holding some meetings at Springdale, Washington County. As a result of the meetings, quite a number of persons adopted the faith of that body and practiced accordingly. A church was organized in that place early in 1885, and the erection of a meeting house was begun at once. In addition to his subscription to the enterprise, Elder Scholes agreed to paint the house when it should be ready. Further than this, we have the words of Elder Scholes himself as follows, quote, "I volunteered to do the painting as my share of the work, in addition to my subscription. I worked away at the church at odd times, sometimes a half day and sometimes more, as I could spare the time. The last Sunday in April 1885, in order to finish the work so I could be free to go out for the summer's labor with a tent, and expecting to go the next day 20 miles, I went over to the church and finished up a small strip of painting on the south side of the house, clear out of sight of all public roads, and here I quietly worked away for perhaps 2 hours, in which time I finished it and then went home. It was for this offense that I was indicted." Just because he was finishing up painting a small strip on the south side of the house on Sunday, he was indicted. So Brother A.T. Jones continues now. At the fall term of the circuit court held at Fayetteville, Arkansas, Mr. J.A. Armstrong of Springdale was summoned before the grand jury. He was asked if he knew any of the violators of the Sunday law. He said he did. So the grand jury says, "Who are they?" Armstrong replies, "The Frisco Railroad is running trains every Sunday." G.J., which was the grand jury, says, "Do you know of any others?" Armstrong says, "Yes, the hotels of this place are open and do a full run of business on Sunday as on other days." The grand jury asks, "Do you know of any others?" You can tell as this continues that the grand jury was seeking for one particular person, one particular violation. Armstrong says, "Yes, sir, the drugstores and barbershops all keep open and do business every Sunday." Grand jury asks, "Do you know of any others?" "Yes," Armstrong answers, "the livery stables do more business on Sunday than on any other day of the week." After several repetitions of the same form of question and answer in relation to other lines of business, this question was reached. Grand jury, "Do you know of any Seventh-day Adventists who ever work on Sunday?" Armstrong, "Yes, sir." After getting from the witness the names of his brethren, indictments were found against 5 persons, all of whom were Seventh-day Adventists. Elder Scholes was one of the 5. The indictment read as follows: State of Arkansas versus indictment, J.W. Scholes. So J.W. Scholes was indicted. Quote, "The grand jury of Washington County, in the name and by the authority of the state of Arkansas, accuse J.W. Scholes, this minister, of the crime of Sabbath breaking committed as follows." In other words, the said J.W. Scholes on Sunday, the 26th of April, 1885, in the county and state aforesaid did unlawfully perform labor other than customary household duties of daily comfort, necessity, or charity against the peace and dignity of the state of Arkansas. P.J. Henderson, proxy attorney, I guess. Mr. Scholes was convicted. An appeal was taken to the Supreme Court of the state October 30th, 1886. The judgment of the Circuit Court was affirmed by the Supreme Court. Almost a score of cases, essentially the same as the case of Elder Scholes, were held over in the different circuit courts of the state, awaiting the decision of the Supreme Court in his case. The history of these cases and others is as follows. So we're going to have now case after case after case similar to this one. The second case is concerning Alan Meeks at the Star of the West in Arkansas. Mr. Weeks had been a resident of Arkansas since 1856, with exception of 1 year. He had held the office of Justice of the Peace for a number of years, both before and after the war. When he became a Seventh-day Adventist, he refused to hold the office longer because its duties conflicted with his observance of the Sabbath. Mr. Meeks was indicted at the July term of the Circuit Court 1885 for Sabbath breaking. He was arrested in November 1885 and held under bonds of $500. And $500 was a lot of money in those days, as we know, for his appearance in January. The offense for which he was indicted was planting potatoes on Sunday, the third Sunday in March 1885. The work was done near Mr. Meeks' own house and not nearer than 2.5 miles to any public road or any place of public worship. On the day referred to, Mr. Lefevre and his wife went to visit Mr. Meeks at his home and found Mr. Meeks planting potatoes. Mr. Meeks quit his work and spent the rest of the day visiting with Mr. Lefevre. Lefevre afterward reported Mr. Meeks to the grand jury, and as the consequence, Mr. Meeks was indicted as stated. The fourth Monday in January, Meeks appeared before Judge Hearn. His case was laid over to await the decision of the Supreme Court in the Scholes case. So, here you have this Mr. Lefevre and his wife. They go to visit Mr. Meeks at his home, finds Mr. Meeks planting potatoes, and they act like, well, we're not going to do anything. We're just your friends, And after they left his house, they go to the law, and they report him. They report Mr. Meeks to the grand jury for working at his own house, planting his potatoes on Sunday. This is disgusting. This is deceptive. The third case involves Mr. McCoy in Magnet Cove, Arkansas. Mr. McCoy moved from Louisville, Kentucky to Arkansas in 1873. He served as constable 7 years and 2 terms as Justice of the Peace in Hot Spring County. In 1884, he became a Seventh-day Adventist. At the August 1885 term of the Circuit Court in Hot Springs County, he was indicted for Sabbath breaking on the voluntary evidence of a Mr. Thomas Garrett. The particular offense with which he was charged was plowing on Sunday. The witness was a Mr. Weatherford, a member of the Methodist Church. The work was done half a mile from any public road and entirely away from any place of public worship. Mr. Weatherford went into the field where Mr. McCoy was plowing and spent several hours with him, walking around as he plowed. Yeah, just walking in Mr. McCoy's field and watching him plow, acting like, well, nothing's unusual here. He was summoned as a witness in the case by the grand jury. In September 1885, Mr. McCoy was arrested and held under bonds for his appearance. When he appeared at the February term of the court, his case with others was laid over to await the decision of the Supreme Court. Mr. McCoy owned a small farm and team, and foreseeing, as he thought, that they would soon be consumed in paying fines and costs, he could not, in duty to his family and in harmony with his conscientious convictions of right and duty, allow all his property to go in that way. Neither could he afford to lose a whole day every week. He therefore decided to abandon his farm, leaving it to satisfy the demands of the law against him in his case, and leave that country, hoping by this means to save at least his team and personal property. By the advice of Elder Dan T. Jones, and at his earnest request, Mr. McCoy returned to Hot Spring County at the time for his appearance, February 1887, and confessed judgment under the indictment. A portion of the cost was remitted, and the fine and a portion of the cost were paid by Elder Jones, and Mr. McCoy was released. Mr. McCoy said to Mr. Jones with tears in his eyes that while he was reckless and wicked, he was not molested. He wasn't bothered while he was reckless and wicked, before he became a Seventh-day Adventist, that is. But as soon as he turned and tried to live a religious life, he was indicted and fined for it. Let me repeat this. Mr. McCoy said to Elder Jones, his minister, with tears in his eyes, that while he was reckless and wicked before he was a Seventh-day Adventist, he was not molested. He wasn't bothered by anybody. But as soon as he turned, changed his life, repented, and tried to live a religious life, he was indicted and fined for it. I have taken these passages from A.T. Jones's book, The Two Republics, pages 877 to 880. So, there you have it. Several testimonies of people who were persecuted during this time period, the 1880s, 1890s, for violating the Sunday law. And yet people say today, well, this will never happen. Well, it has already happened in this country, dear people. Americans need to wake up and resist this encroachment upon their religious liberty, which is soon to happen in this country. We haven't had persecution happen in decades because of the Sunday law, but it's about to return and usher in the second coming of Christ. So if you appreciate this type of content, then tap that like button so that this video can be sent far and wide to those who are seeking for the truth. And by the way, this is only part one. We will continue part two in the next video on the same subject. And if you haven't subscribed, then we would highly encourage you to do so. Thank you for joining us here at Jewels of Truth. We hope and pray that you will have a good day in the Lord.